So even as we're studying contemporary theory, we really need to take just a little bit of time to go backwards, to look backwards and see how is it that this theory developed. And if we look behind the work of Talcott Parsons, we see not only Durkheim, who I've already spoken about, but we also see Ferdinand Tonnies. So Ferdinand Tonnies was alive in the mid-1800s all the way through to about the mid-1900s, and he was a German sociologist and a theorist. And his most important contribution to sociology is the types of society or social groups that existed. Now, back in his day, there were two primary types of society, and he labeled these Gemeinschaft and Gesellschaft. These are German words. Gemeinschaft is most commonly translated as community, and Gesellschaft is most commonly translated as society. And so he had some ideas about the interplay between small groups and large groups, community and society. So let's see what he had to say. And bear in mind that the reason why we're looking at Ferdinand Tonnies' work is because if we look just at the style of his work, these types of classifications, we can see where Talcott Parsons might have read this work of Tonnies and said, hey, I understand that he's looking at society and trying to figure out what the attributes of a particular society are. And just maybe that's where he came up with his ideas for his systems levels. So let's take a look at these concepts of Gemeinschaft and Gesellschaft and see exactly what it was that Ferdinand Tonnies was trying to tell us. With these two ideas, he really was trying to distinguish between two different types of social groups. He felt that one type of group, the Gemeinschaft group, was bound together based on mutual bonds, based on friendship and kinship, and based on commonality of their goals. So in other words, this is the type of group where the goal of the group is very important and everybody in the group works towards that goal. And so you can see where this might have been the concept or the idea or feeling of community. The connections here are involving very personal relationships based on friendships, based on kinship. The family is very, very important. In this type of community, the society has a lot of control over or influence over how the group exists. And some examples of these types of communities, historically, we can think of hunter-gatherer types of groups as Gemeinschaft types of communities. And we can also think of groups that were before the Industrial Revolution or societies that existed before the Industrial Revolution as having these types of Gemeinschaft characteristics. Now on the other side of that for Tonnies was the Gesellschaft community. And Tonnies said that we today in contemporary America would live in a Gesellschaft type of community. We have lots of differentiation in our work, and what that requires is interdependence, but of a superficial variety. In other words, I have to depend on all kinds of people to be able to exist in society, but the ties that I have with those people aren't necessarily strong, meaningful connections. They aren't necessarily strong bonds that I have with other people. Gesellschaft communities are also characterized by smaller families. We don't need to have that large family anymore because we don't need all of those able bodies to help us with our job. Oftentimes our jobs in these type of Gesellschaft communities only require our brain. They no longer require our brawn, and so therefore we could start to have less and less children. We also tend to move away from our parents. When we become older and we want to establish ourselves as adults in the community, oftentimes that means we move away. We fly the coop, and we no longer want to live close to the influence of our parents. So for Tonnies, these two different types of communities, these were important observations that Tonnies was making because he was realistically talking about how society was going to change through the process of industrialization. Now remember, he lived during the time of the early Industrial Revolution, and so he was seeing all of these drastic changes that were happening with the population shift from rural society to more urban existence. He was seeing that people were becoming less and less connected with each other, and that they were becoming more superficially interdependent on each other. So let's just talk a minute about this notion of either these strong ties of friendship and kinship or this superficial interdependence that might be required of us. If I live in a Gesellschaft community and I require the help of someone, chances are they're going to help me because I am going to give them something of value, i.e., money. So let's just think about this in the most rudimentary type of way. Alright, so let's think about your toilet. Now, I know what you're thinking. What does this have to do with sociology? But bear with me for a minute here. In a Gemeinschaft type of community, when you needed to go to the bathroom, chances are, if you didn't have one in the house, you were going to the outhouse out back. And chances are, once you reach the age of adulthood, which was probably 13 or 14 years old, you could make do, if you had to, without any kind of facility at all. You could simply walk outside, dig yourself a hole, do what you needed to do, or squat down behind a bush and do what you needed to do, and really no one would bother you about that. That was accepted behavior and it was perfectly okay. Now I want you to think about what happens in a complex society. How many people does it take for you to go to the bathroom in the morning? It's the first thing, essentially, that all of us do when we get out of bed in the morning. But how many people does it take for me to pee? That's the question. Alright, so just look at that toilet. How many components are there? Probably 50. If we include all the guts that are inside the tank and the bowl and the seat and the lid and everything else that's involved, we probably have 50 different mechanical parts and bits and pieces that go into the making of that toilet. But can you make it? Alright, you might be able to if you're really, really smart about mechanical things. But chances are, when you try to put that toilet together from all of its miscellaneous little bits and pieces, you're not going to get it right. You need a specialist for that. And you need that person to build that toilet so that you can pee. Now, that's not the only thing you need in the morning. You probably also need a light. And for that, you need an electrician. And you also probably need some privacy, maybe a door. And for that, you need a carpenter. And you might need some water, not only for the toilet, but also hopefully to wash your hands. And for that, you need a water treatment plant and a specialist. Heck, looking back at that toilet, there are some raw products there that you also need: some metal, some plastic, some porcelain, and you need people who understand how to make those molds and work with those materials. You need the person who drives the truck, who gets the toilet to the local shop so that you can buy it. You need the people in the store to stock the shelf. You need the person at the cashier desk to ring you up. You need the person who built the cart to get the box to your car. You need your car to transport that toilet home. Now think about all the people it takes just for you to do the most simple task in a complex society. And this is kind of the idea that Tonnies was getting at when he talked about the Gesellschaft community. I don't need you. I need your expertise. And that requires us to be interdependent on each other. I don't really, I guess if I had to, I could bake my own bread in the morning, but realistically, I'm not sure I know how to do that, so I'm going to run down to the store and I'm going to spend $2 or $3 and I'm going to buy a loaf of bread that someone else has baked. So my money is important and the baker is important and essential to my well-being, but I don't really care about the baker, nor does the baker care about me. Really, all the baker wants is the paycheck. So you get the idea here. Gemeinschaft types of communities are less complex. Gesellschaft types of communities are more complex. However, they require us to have more of an interdependence on each other with a more superficial type of relationship and establishment of that. All right? So you can see where this is also a functional theoretical point of view. It's talking about how the components of society must function in order for the system to work. So now you can see how Tonnies' work is very, very similar to Parsons' system levels. Parsons said that we had a cultural system, a social system, a personality system, and a behavioral organism as a system. And all of those four components had to work together. Just like the Gemeinschaft community has certain components, the Gesellschaft community has certain components, modern day society, according to Parsons, also had certain components. All right? I hope this helps. Take care. We'll talk again soon. Have a great day.